Hey guys, welcome to our first flipped classroom video of the year. We're in Unit 1 and we're looking at our first target here. Writing our expressions verbally. What I mean by verbally is writing them out in words that you would actually speak or write down in English. And mathematically, writing them in numbers, variables, and symbols. And how to translate between the two. Right? So communication, it's a pretty important thing. Whether you're trying to communicate in English, right? Like this guy down here, there's my kind of English teacher, lots of double negatives. Whether you're trying to communicate in Spanish, some of you are taking Spanish classes this year. Donde está el baño? That's a pretty important one in Spanish. And French. Bonjour. It's really about the only French word I know. But whatever language you're trying to speak, guys, the important first part of communication is making sure you understand the vocabulary. I can't speak Spanish and French very well because I don't really know what a lot of the words mean in Spanish and French. English I'm a little bit better at, and math I'm pretty decent at. And the reason we don't understand math very well a lot of times, I think, is because we really don't know the vocabulary. So that's what we're going to start working on today. So here is a list of phrases and words that are commonly used when we're talking about math. What I want you to do is pause the video and do your best to try and come up with what mathematical operation, symbol, number, variable are these phrases asking you to think of when you read them. So go ahead, pause the video, and we'll come back and check our answers in just a minute. Okay, let's see how you did. So we can see that most of these are talking about multiplication, addition, subtraction, and division. There's some here that talk about exponents. One thing to notice, guys, is there's lots of different ways to describe these different operations and exponents. Some of them ask you to do extra things as well. You can see sum of, difference of, product of, and quotient of not only ask you to add, subtract, multiply, and divide, but they want you to take whatever you're adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing and put it inside parentheses. Also, more than, greater than, and less than. You need to add and subtract, but you have to switch the order of the terms that you're adding and subtracting from the words. We'll see some examples of this later, but most times we write down our symbols and our terms in the same order that we read, from left to right. But with the more than, greater than, less than, when you see that than at the end of the phrase, it's telling you that you have to actually switch the order. Again, if this seems confusing to you now, we're going to look at some examples in just a little bit that hopefully will help clear it up. Exponents. Now, this is a word that might be familiar to you, and maybe you're good with it, but maybe you're not. So let's just quickly talk about how to write an exponent properly. In some future videos, we'll talk more about how to simplify them, what they really are. But now I'm just concerned with us actually translating, us actually being able to write the mathematical language here. So we've got 6 raised to the power of 5. And what we're going to see here is 6 is our base. That's our normal number. And then 5 is smaller and up and to the right of 6. And that tells us that 6 is the base and 5 is the exponent there. 11 squared. Squared means an exponent of 2. So 11 is normal and 2 is small and up and to the right. We can also square variables. So if we have y cubed, cubed is an exponent of 3. So we can see y to the 3rd. And same thing with x to the 7th. We're going to see a variable is the base, and then the 7 is smaller and up and to the right. Okay, so that's how we're going to be writing exponents down when we're working with them, translating our sentences here. So let's actually dive right in, and I want you to start translating. I want you to take these sentences that are in words, verbal sentences, and write them out as numbers, variables, and symbols. Go ahead and pause the video, give each of these a shot, and then we'll come back and check your answers. Okay, let's see how you did. There will most likely be one correct expression for each of these sentences. There might be some variability in the way you write division, whether you wrote it as a fraction in number 3 like I did, or with a division bar with little dots above the division symbol, and the way you could write your fraction down to number 5 are some differences. But for the most part, there's going to be one correct way to write the expression for each of these sentences. But what about if we're going the other way? What if we give you an expression and want you to write it out in words? Well, that's what we're going to practice here. So each of these expressions can be written out as a sentence with only using words. And that's what I want. No numbers or symbols here. Only words. You can just call the variables the variable. That's fine if you just want to use R for R or N for N. So go ahead, pause the video, and we'll come back and check the answers in just a minute. How'd we do here? The difference between translating our expressions into words is that you very well might have a different answer for all 5 of these than me, but have a correct answer as well. There can be a lot of differences because there's a lot of different ways to say multiplication or times. There's a lot of different ways to say addition or added to or increased by. So if you have any questions about whether your answers are correct, please make sure you write them down and bring them to class tomorrow, and we'll talk about them and see where you're at with that. Well, that brings us to the end of our lesson here. So hopefully you learned some stuff here. If you have questions, please make sure you bring them to class, and we'll talk about this some more tomorrow. We'll see you then. Bye.